Hi everyone, I'm Camille. I'm an Apple Ads specialist at LeadTech. So super thrilled to be participating in this panel today, especially as we dive into the future of UA, ASO, and growth is in this new AI era. So thank you for having me first. And then, yeah, I mean, favorite AI tool this year. There's many, but if I could pick one, it would be like Author.ai. For me, it's a game changer for productivity. No more manual note taking during team calls. Like it's super useful because it has an immediate structure summary and all the action items pulled out by the AI. So I strongly recommend it.
Thank you, Camille, and welcome to the session. I'll pass over to Kansu. Hi, Kansu.
Hi everyone, I'm Cansu. I'm Director Europe at Adjust. I've been with the company for 6 years, but overall I spent 11 years in mobile marketing. And thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation. So regarding AI tools, as a business development person, research is playing an important part of our day-to-day job. So Perplexity is one of the tools we use because it doesn't just generate the outcome, but you can also see where the reference is actually coming from. We also have our own AI assistant for adjust data. If we are looking for any specific metric, we also use our growth copilot a lot.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kansu. Welcome as well to you. Up next on my screen, I have Hannah. Hannah, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. I'm Hannah. I run a little agency called Aperture. I've been doing mobile stuff for about 14 years now. Really excited to talk to you today about everything that we've got going on. And I mean, everyone's favorite tool is ChatGPT, right? So I won't talk about that, but we run a full service growth agency. So we have trained our own models on OpenAI on all of our knowledge so that the team can learn. We're currently building a little Hannah AI to give to all of our clients as well for free with a company called Passion. But in terms of creative, we're really loving Luma Labs. We're really loving Midjourney. We're really loving 11 Labs as well. There's some really, really amazing tools out there now. So we've been really kind of souping up on our creative resource and our AI creative output lately too.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anna, and welcome to Lauren, last but not least. Hi.
Hi. Hi, thanks everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Lauren. I've worked in the industry for over 13 years now, but I've been at M&C Saatchi Performance for 8 years this month. I'm the global head of ASO. And in terms of my favorite tools, I mean, very basic. I'd say I use Copilot a lot. I'm all about saving time, so wherever I can save time in terms of writing emails or anything like that. But we also have been implementing it into some of our processes as well. I'm working with our data and analytics team to kind of surface AI insights from our reports and things like that. So that's kind of where I'm using it the most.
That's brilliant. Thank you to the four of us, to the four of you actually, and thank you for joining us in today's session and making the time for the conversation today. I think just before we officially kick off the conversation, we can maybe also hear it from the audience. So for those watching us right now, you should see a pop-up on your screen with a quick question. I'd love to know from all of you watching us, how confident are you currently feeling with your AI literacy so far? I see that a lot of you are actually already voting. Maybe there's already some of you who are leveraging your knowledge to teach others. I would love to know. But yeah, I do see, maybe we'll bring the results forward. I do see quite a big chunk in majority here. So it's interesting that a lot of you actually consider yourselves intermediate with your AI literacy. So thanks all for voting. I hope you will also be able to live with some great takeaways that will help you excelling in your AI journey also. But with that, I'd like to dive into our panel conversation. So let's get into it. And we know AI is everywhere. A lot of our skills are shifting and how we're applying them as well. So I'd like to start by understanding, Camille, maybe first with you. What's one obsolete skill you'll retire by 2026?
Yeah, there's many, but if I can select one, I'm happily retiring any sort of like manual, super granular bid and budget management across platforms. Seriously, this sometimes makes me crazy. So I guess like the algorithm are just, much better at real-time optimization than any human could ever be. So I would spending an hour tweaking budget is now just wasted time. So I would rather spend that hour focus on feeding the AI the right conversion signals, or designing the next big creative test. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Camille. Kansu, what's your point of view here? Any skills you'll retire by next year?
I believe in addition to this campaign micromanagement, I would say I would love to retire this manual reporting. What I mean is exporting CSV files, creating this, pulling this manual reports. That should already have been behind us. So nowadays, the future is all about having this automated insights and signals where MMPs, mobile measurement partners, they are sharing this data, showcasing this data, anomalies, trends, patterns, and you can find out easily without even pulling a single report. So that's where we are heading towards. And I agree with Camille with this micromanagement of like this campaign optimization. We know algorithm is already doing a great job to optimize our campaigns toward that specific target. But I would say it's not kind of disappearing, it's evolving, because we need to still understand how we can make the algorithm work in our favor. Like we need to understand the game, the signals, the parameters that actually influence on algorithm creating this like real business outcome for our business.
That's great. What about you, Hannah? Anything to add?
I love what you just said, Shansu. It's totally right. We do need to think about how we can make our data better. We've retired manual report. I mean, we still do a little bit of manual reporting. You're always going to do a little bit of manual reporting, don't get me wrong. But we have all of our dashboards automated now. We use the APIs. We pull everything in directly. We still love Google Sheets, But you're totally right that really what we need to be doing is not trying to outsmart the algorithm. Like, yes, the algorithm is doing the targeting. It's our job to feed it better things to learn from. So how can we make sure the data is as clean as possible? We're cleaning up all of the inputs. We're setting the stage. We do want to set our exclusions as well. Like we want to make sure we've got very good exclusions in place. So we are kind of feeding it a little bit. We can put some suggestions in there, but ultimately what it is going to come down to is basically those three things. One, cleaning your signals, not just cleaning them, but really optimizing your signals as well. So inside app, and we're moving a lot away from mobile to web to app flows and things like that. So EMQ, event match quality, is getting more and more important. That's not something you ever have to really worry about inside the app world. But as soon as you start moving outside that, it's EMQ this, EMQ that, and everyone's really upset about it. Then we're thinking about fast creative learnings. So I think we'll talk a little bit later about like creative OSs and so on, but making sure that we're really stacking our learnings, and then really thinking about your entire funnel too. So in that world where we're retiring skills, like retiring all of that bidding, just moving towards full funnel optimization as a big part of that too.
That's absolutely great insights. Thank you, Hannah. Maybe just piggybacking on Kansu's comment. Now, if algorithms do the bidding and targeting, what then should you focus on doing?
I would say, first of all, we need to understand how the algorithm work, right? Not just for like what they are optimizing for, but what signals they are relying on. And when we are making a change, when actually algorithm starts reacting that, because there will be always a buffer period, right? So understanding the timeline is quite crucial, because otherwise we can be like over correcting the campaign like too early, and that will kill the campaign performance. So, and it's all about finding that specific like pillars that will help us, that will give us this like competitive edge. And we can also work with this like improved signals. And as I said, we can make this algorithm work in our favor. And there's this creative layer in addition to that. I think that's the only pillar that's still in fully human hands, right? So we can also gain a better understanding this creative sets, different creative sets, like how they're impacting in this like learning phase. And there are some outside factors, like we do not have much control over market dynamics, like competitive environment, that's still having an impact on algorithm, like how it learns and how it spends. So our main goal is just feeding the right signals, like the conversions, events, creatives, and everything, and letting the algorithm optimize for like the long-term value. Like that's the ultimate goal.
And I'll just add, just to give people some really specific examples of what some signals might be, because we're being quite top level at the moment, but to be really specific, you know, the way in which these different signals work and when you're starting to engineer your signals, like imagine you're optimizing for click. You're only going to get people who are clicky people on your ads. They're going to be low quality. Then you start optimizing for install. Of course, these are going to just be people who are installing your app. We don't even want to be optimizing for install unless you're a health app and that's what you can do, you know. Then we're thinking, okay, it's a subscription app. We're optimizing for trial. Great. But is trial actually the highest quality signal that we can send? Are there other things that someone does inside the onboarding flow that shows that this person is going to be a higher quality user for us? For example, if we're asking for age in the onboarding flow, are we giving a weighting to people who are of an older age because we know that they convert better? Are we deprioritizing people who are 18 to 25 because they know that they convert at half of the rate of people who are over 35? You know, are there specific things that they're answering in the onboarding flow? And we're actually moving towards kind of value-based optimization. We can do value-based optimization based on all of these different signals that they do on day zero. If you really want to get started in a simple way, then you should know that 50% of all of your trial cancellations happen on day zero. So of all of the trial cancellations you'll get, 50% of them will happen straight away, basically. So a really simple way to get started with experimenting with your signals is just to do an activated trial. So triggering the trial event 2 hours, let's say, after the trial happens from your server. So then you can optimize for this as a higher quality trial. It'll be more expensive, obviously, because you're going to be missing like 30% of the people who did the trial at least, probably, depending on your cancellation rate. But then the algorithm will know these are people who are less likely to cancel. These are people who my product is more relevant for. So they're going to find more of those people. So that's a really simple way to get started before you go and have to get a PhD in data engineering to go and do some value-based optimization.
Brilliant. Those are amazing tips. Thanks, Hannah. Maybe Camille, do you have something you want to comment here?
Yeah, just exactly what Anna said. In the end, is also understanding the whole ecosystem, right? We don't need to learn how to code, but at least understanding what's happening and understanding reading the metrics. So I guess the real power comes from understanding the data that through the AI. So understanding your lifetime value model, understanding what the revenue that has come from, because you can't optimize the machine or challenge the decision if you're not understanding what's happening in the whole ecosystem. So yeah, I agree with Anna on this.
Thanks. Thank you for this round. I'm guessing now, looking at Kansu specifically, can you maybe share a bit more on how you would train yourself to think in systems instead of campaigns?
I would say when I was working directly in user acquisition, the first question I asked myself, it wasn't about like how I can generate like more revenue. Of course, obviously that's the main goal, but just to understand the ecosystem. So we also need to understand like how ad networks, platforms, we work together, how they are making money. Once we understand this, we will realize that it's actually not quite aligned with our business objective, right? Like the platform itself, they will try to maximize revenue per impression. So imagine having this campaign strategy. Of course, it will work towards your business objective, but also understanding like how the platform operates, it's a quite competitive advantage. So for me, I believe like thinking in systems, it's not about just working on one single campaign. Like it's about like seeing beyond one single campaign, working with this like feedback loops. And this feedback loops, as Hannah mentioned, that can get as complex as different type of like in-app activities, conversions we are feeding to the system. Or we can take a more simplistic approach and we can just start optimizing towards this like targeted ROAS. But still, even with this like targeted ROAS, there will be different elements. They will be affecting this like long-term growth. So that will also help us to come up with this like predictions. And ultimately, the algorithm will start working on this long-term lifetime value we are targeting.
Amazing. And Camille, what is your approach on training yourself to think of systems instead of campaigns?
I think, like, again, it's understanding, the whole everything that has been happening around, like, the 360 understanding of the KPIs, understanding what is happening in the different teams, not only just focusing on what you're doing on your own, and understanding all the metrics and the KPI around, to be able, like, to translate this, different AI information that is giving you basically along the way. Also, as Jansu said.
Brilliant. Thank you, Camille. Maybe my next question will go directly to you. Once again, Camille, do you think that user acquisition managers should now learn prompt engineering or data modeling potentially?
I think you need to be understanding, again, a bit of everything. Doesn't mean that you need to learn to code, doesn't mean that you need to learn about Python tomorrow, but you need to have a clear understanding of also, like, what the other team members are doing, and being able to translate the different KPI, where the revenue data comes from, and you have to be kind of a bit of fluent, in the language of the machine to manage it, being able to translate everything into something that makes sense for everyone. So, and also being able to kind of challenge it, right? It's not only about reading the data, but also challenge when something means a bit off, and following your guts as well, I would say, like, when you look at all of this data.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Camille.
I was just going to say, I think prompt engineering is becoming less and less important as well. Ultimately, like, I do not write any prompts now that are like a big long thing of telling it how to respond to me. Now, whenever we're using these tools, what we can do is use one tool to help inform the other, firstly. And so we don't need to spend lots and lots of time kind of putting all of this stuff together, because a lot of the time it will have a lot of the information that you need, and you can ask it to, like, let's say we were using ChatGPT, you can ask it to go and do deep research on a specific topic. And I usually start, if I'm going into a new area, go do some deep research on this topic, please. I'm not saying you're Rory Sutherland, the best copywriter. I'm just saying go do some deep research on XYZ, and then I discuss it with it. It's not really about prompt engineering anymore. But what I do think is that people need to be a lot more curious in general. We see, whilst we're having access to all of these tools, I am finding there's a decrease in curiosity, because everything's so easily fed to you, and we're not kind of querying it within ourselves. So what we really need to do is get more curious about it. You need to know the basics. You need to know what, let's say, events matter, how an experiment should be run, which dashboards you should be looking at, how the data works all together, all of these different things. But then getting really, really curious about it. And if you're curious about how to get more curious, then you can even ask that ultimately as well of your AI model too.
Brilliant. That's great information for sure, Hannah. Maybe just to wrap up this topic here of shifting skills, Lauren, what do you highlight as the three main human skills that will give you an edge over automated systems?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely still a human edge. So, like, firstly, I think anything to do with kind of strategic judgment definitely needs that human element. So obviously, AI can do a really good job of surfacing trends and putting the right information in front of the right people. But I think it can't fully understand things like sort of, business context, long-term goals and things like that. So I think that's really still an important human element. But also being in the App Store optimization team, I'm working really heavily with lots of different teams. So that might be the product team, the marketing team, customer service team. And so again, I think another human element is bringing teams together for cross collaboration and knowing when to bring the right people in. And again, I think that's just something that's more effective when you're kind of a human. And then lastly, again, also a large part of my work is a lot of localization. So I work in the global team, so we support clients globally doing any kind of keyword optimizations, A/B testing. And so again, I think AI is really good at localizing, but not necessarily transcreating. And I think, you're still needing to get that local nuance, any kind of seasonal trends, any market sensitivities that are unique to those markets that you're appearing in. So again, there's still that human element, but that can be supplemented with kind of AI. But I think they're the kind of sort of three areas that I think, having a human approach is still really, really valuable.
For sure. I mean, Kansu, which skills would you highlight here, additional to Lauren's?
Yeah, I agree with Lauren. Of course, like AI can process data faster than any of us, but sometimes I feel like that struggles like connecting the dots and understanding this like complex mechanism, especially in app marketing, even like one single change that can affect the whole system. So we still need that human touch. And I think the real human edge is in systemic thinking, like understanding this complex mechanism and creating this clear, actionable insights.
Perfect. I mean, that's all great stuff. Thanks to the three of you. I mean, looking now at data fluency and mastering modeling and experimentation. Camille, what does data fluency mean for a UA lead in 2026? How does this technical need to be? Should maybe marketers start even learning Python as mentioned just before, or do we just need to learn maybe how to ask better questions?
Yeah, so we mentioned it before. I think it's a kind of the ability to read the AI minds, or at least read the data it's using. We don't need to be a data scientist writing Python, but we need to be kind of like great auditor and system designer. So we need to understand the concepts that are happening, how the lifetime value is calculated, where the data points are coming from, why certain metrics are prioritized over others. And we also need to challenge, all of those AI, data decisions. And we need to become, more fluent, enough to audit kind of the machine and ensure that the optimizations, are aligned to our business goals, basically, because that's the main goal at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Camille. Lauren, what do you think? Should marketers start learning Python or really just learn how to prompt?
I think the latter. I think learning how to prompt effectively is key, really. Internally, we have data and analytics teams who are helping guide us how to ask the right questions, how to actually write the prompts in the first place, because I think knowing where to start is quite overwhelming. So I definitely think, yeah, learning how to ask the right questions and interpret the data that you're getting, I think is the most important. So no, I don't think you need to be a Python expert necessarily.
100%. Thank you. Thanks, Lauren. And starting with you as well with the next question, we look at creative intelligence. So how would you recommend growth teams to upskill on creative analysis? What sort of tools or maybe mindsets are really critical here?
Yeah, I think obviously we mentioned earlier that kind of using maybe using AI to develop creative isn't necessarily the best approach, but where I think it can be really useful is through creative analysis. We've built a tool internally where the data and analytics team have worked really closely with the creative team. And essentially, we've built like an AI model which kind of feeds in design best practices, but also performance data. So we are a performance agency, so we do have access to a lot of data. And essentially, the AI is analyzing lots of different trends and spitting out the best practices for different creative formats, different platforms, different markets. So it can be a really effective way of having that analysis at your fingertips and knowing which creative to develop at the right time to kind of save you from spending lots of marketing dollars testing. And obviously it's still worth testing, but it can kind of save quite a lot of that process as well. So that's where I think it could be really beneficial for teams, is to really upskill on how to use it for creative analysis specifically.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks for that. Looking at you, Kansu, now, what mindset would you highlight here?
I think being agile is quite important, right? Like it's not all about creating like thousands of different like creative sets, but we need to come up with the concept, like what are the hooks, like winning frameworks, or when we are failing, and creating that specific like winning framework and then iterating on that. And even like if you are finding out this best performing creative sets, like after a while it will stop performing, right? Like there will be creative fatigue, and you need to create this like automated systems to understand when does this creative start not performing and how can I continuously like acting on it and start coming up with this like new fresh idea, and I can just change the creative set and move on. So understanding like when the creative is not performing, it's super easy. Like you will see the results like literally in seconds, like in hours. But for the creatives like performing well, I think this automated systems are becoming super important.
Brilliant. That makes sense. But I mean, from your perspective, if AI can generate 1,000 ad variants, what skills do humans need to create and learn from them, really?
I think the most important thing is centralizing these insights, right? In the end, when you create that winning framework, it will be easier to iterate on that. It will be easier to coming up with this like similar concepts. But there will be always this like, there needs to be this human touch, because there will be different cultures, different geos, different languages like you are working with. Something they might resonate with some audiences, but that doesn't mean it's going to resonate with like other locations or geos. So that type of like feedback loop is super important. And I believe in the past, I think the biggest gap between the teams like UA team, creative team is not super data savvy, and UA team, they were feeding the feedback to creative team, but some things it was just getting lost in translation, right? And nowadays, like I'm seeing this like new roles opening up, like creative strategists. It's kind of in between, like bridging the gap between these UA teams and creative teams, because these team members, they are also experienced in creating test campaigns. So they can create the ideas, they can iterate on that, they can start testing it, and they can share the results. And their main goal is just coming up with this fresh ideas and insights.
Brilliant. I mean, should user acquisition managers learn design language and storytelling principles, perhaps?
For sure. I mean, in my opinion, 100%. I mean, in our team, we want, and in Aperture, I've really built a hybrid unit. You know, our UA manager thinks in signals, onboarding, pricing, ASO, everything that's happening post-click, all the way down to deep conversion. As Chansu says, creative strategists who are doing some of the reporting, reading data, spotting patterns, briefing AI, you know, working with AI a lot, actually. You know, they have to be very good at that in general. Product growth people who are thinking also about the entire funnel from ads as a whole, and what we're doing in ads and how that passes through. So really what we want is people who are good at everything. I know that's really hard to find, but we're really looking for people who are, like I said before, really curious and want to understand different areas, want to get really into the data. They're never happy until they really understand why something is happening. And then with that, we're building in our own creative OSs and building in our systems and so on top of that. So yeah, I 100% agree.
Perfect, Hannah. Thanks for jumping in. I'll probably just stay with you for the next question as well. How do you build a creative testing OS that turns insights into constant iteration?
100%. And I've got a great deck on this. If anyone wants it afterwards, just send me a message and I'll send you a whole deck or talk on this. But what we really want to do is really think in that system for this. So you want to split your testing and your scaling, firstly. Like we're thinking in testing, and then we're trying to stack our learnings in testing. What we do within Aperture is we layer everything into different themes or jobs to be done, firstly. So for our creative framework, so jobs to be done is a theoretical framework based on how someone wants to use your product and what they want to achieve by using your product. We split all of that out, and then we start doing, with statics usually first, a bunch of messaging tests. We get our learnings from that, layer that into our next round of tests, which is usually a creative design test. We've understood then which are the things and the messages that are working. That helps us define a creative direction that we want to go down. We start to create multiple versions of those. We keep passing the learnings back in again and again and again. So we're stacking our learnings. We track everything. So we have an experiment board where we have a card for every single experiment that we're running. We're putting all of the learnings in there. And it's a whole big thing. I know we're running out of time. I could talk about this all day and I'd be happy to chat with anyone about it. But really, this is what we need to build into all of our companies to get success on these platforms now.
Sure. Thank you, Hannah. Maybe we can even have a session specifically for this, maybe in the next year. I guess I'll just move up to the next topic as we are now on time as well. We'll take another 5 minutes just to cover quickly App Store optimization and how ASO is reborn in a generative world. So Lauren, I'll start with you here. Should we think of ASO as content optimization or conversion storytelling in 2026?
I definitely think more of conversion storytelling. I think particularly with Apple and Google's launches of custom product pages and custom store listings, I think it's becoming really even more important to match the user intent to what you're showing them. So, previously we could do it with paid campaigns with CPPs and CSLs, but now we can also do it with organic keywords as well. So it's really effective. And I actually think consumers are going to become, their expectations are going to be that they are seeing more relevant pages when they're being directed to the storefronts themselves as well. So I think if you're not using it, I think it's going to be a detriment to you. But I think still, typical content optimization and traditional ASO, I think it's still relevant. So, keyword optimizations, the fact that you can now target keywords with custom product pages and custom store listings, the idea being is, you have the higher ranking potential if you have a high conversion rate. So by using CPPs and CSLs and generating that higher conversion rate in that way, you're also helping with keyword ranking potential and visibility. So I think the strategy has changed slightly, and it's definitely more about that conversion storytelling. But that's not to say that your typical ASO has also gone out the window. It's just kind of evolved, I'd say.
Thank you, Lauren. I mean, what do you see as the new KPIs for ASO when ranking algorithms themselves are actually adaptive and generative now?
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously like the algorithms themselves are using AI to, surface the right apps at the right time, category rankings, things like that. They've launched the ability to summarize reviews as well. So reviews are becoming more and more important. But I think what's even more interesting is how apps are being surfaced on LLMs as well in conversational prompts too. That's a lot harder to track. But there are tools out there that are tracking visibility across LLMs. So where something like your iOS description was not relevant for keywords previously and maybe was a bit untouched, it's now becoming more relevant for surfacing on LLMs. So there's kind of a whole change in strategy, and with that comes new KPIs. So I'd say it's not just about the traditional KPIs of, the keywords you're ranking for and organic installs, but also then how your visibility has increased across the LLMs as well. So it's an interesting time and something, we're all still learning and testing from. And there's no kind of one solution that enables us to track that fully. But using a number of different tools, I think we can certainly do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. I'm now looking at Camille and looking ahead of 2026 when building a growth team. What's the 2026 core growth team look like for you?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? So, I mean, I guess it's becoming much, as we mentioned before, much flatter and leaner. So one example we could have still the performance owner, which is, the owner of is kind of the strategic orchestrator here, owning like all the performance, ROAS, LTV outcomes, they are responsible for letting the model targets, the performance, etc. Then I think we still have kind of the creative wizards, as we mentioned, they are expert in cracking the creative code that fits the algorithm, in terms of like design proposal, a lot of like highly creative hypothesis. One other that is also like still super important, obviously, is the growth analyst, right? Because they are the builder. They focus on the infrastructure, the reporting systems, the internal tooling. But as we continue looking at this, I think we move to again leaner teams, and every member must also have understanding and be just not only expert in the silo but also understand how the input affects the entire growth machine, as we mentioned before. So it's a bit of like 360 collaboration happening across teams and channels.
Thank you, Camille. Anna, how does this look from your side then?
Absolutely. Yeah, I added a little bit before, but I would also just encourage everyone to remember that growth is a team sport. Growth is something that has to happen across the entire business, and growth isn't performance either. Growth isn't that one thing. It's the entire business, and everyone inside your business should be working towards the growth of the business through experimentation and prioritized work. So whenever I'm thinking about my growth team, and I'm building growth teams within companies as well, what I'm thinking is, who's my head of growth? This is kind of the chief conductor. They're the orchestrator of everything. They're keeping everyone on the straight and narrow, making sure everyone's sticking to the prioritized work. They're prioritizing the work as well. We've got, you know, as Camille just said, the analyst. We need someone who is an analyst. Like, this is so important. We can't do anything without that person or those people. We need a developer as well, actually, in our growth team, to make sure that we can actually get stuff done. We can get things built. We can get things implemented. You know, even if they're just unblocking things for us to be able to do now, because there's so many amazing tools with no code solutions, but ultimately we need a dev to help set those up in the first place. So we need someone then who can be the operator of those tools. We need a designer ultimately as well, someone who is that creative operator, and then we need a creative thinker as well. So these are all of the core things, as well as whether someone in that team can do, or you need an additional person to kind of operate comms, like CRM, copywriting, all of this stuff. These are really the core things that we need for building a growth team within a company, because this growth itself is closer to product than marketing, really. So we need a team that is operating on the product. And all of the companies that I've been running growth for, product and marketing rolled into growth. So growth, and then I ran the product and the marketing team, but they rolled into that department, basically. So all of that needs to work holistically together. We need to break down those silos. Ultimately, we need to be thinking about that full funnel altogether. And all of those are growth KPIs, LTV, CAC, all of this stuff. They are growth KPIs, not product or marketing. And we need to kind of not be thinking about it in that way anymore.
Amazing. Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for the input. I mean, we could talk for hours about all of this. I'll just try to wrap up very quickly with one quick liner, and I'll go around the room to the four of you to ask, if attendees needs to forget everything else, what's the one skill that will define the best in the industry? Just a quick liner from each of you guys.
Honestly, it's going to be the one skill that is going to be able to get you ahead now is your ability to communicate, you know, and your ability to be curious and experiment based on that. So how are you communicating what you've learned? How are you communicating to LLMs? How are you communicating your experiments? This is really, really key, and it's going to get more important than ever, especially as we're going into this more remote world. Even if some companies are saying, come back to the office, we are getting more and more remote. So communication, whether it's with tooling or with your teams, is the most important thing ultimately now.
Thanks, Hannah.
For me, what resonates the most, Hannah mentioned that, like, prompt engineering, for instance, like, that doesn't resonate much nowadays, because like in the beginning it was a very exciting like job title, but in the end, if you know, like if you understand the whole system, if you know how it works, you don't need a prompt engineer because you're asking the right questions. But we need people like doers, right? Like maybe some analysts with this like experimentation skills for incrementality or MMM, or someone who understands how to create AI agents to automate these flows. So I believe the whole system, it still needs human touch. We still need thinkers. We don't need to know how to code, but we need to just feed them with the right things, like how we can automate this marketing flows, and we can find this like more tech savvy people, and they can work towards that goal.
Thank you, Kansu. Camille, Lauren, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, just one thing for me is also, we mentioned it, but like also being able to understand what is going on outside just your pure task, the whole ecosystem of like the other teams. And as we mentioned, you know, super important to have a lot of cross-functional activities and cross channels, because it's key to understand, yeah, what is happening around you, not only just in your own channel or like, yeah, in your own team, but really, again, coming back also to what Anne was saying, communication and being, kind of an expert in your area, but also understand what's happening around you, basically, yeah.
Yeah, I think the same for me. I think completely aligned. I think there's still that human approach that we need. So I think the one skill that I would think is really important is definitely knowing how to guide AI, how to ask the right questions and understand the outputs of that to really get the most out of it. But yeah, there's definitely that human element still that's required.
Thank you to the four of you. I think that's absolutely great advice. And thank you once again for joining and for having such a strong conversation and insights. I believe we also have some great guidance for all of us during this AI noise. And with that, we wrap up our panel here. Thanks once again for your great participation.